Okay, and we are live. Welcome to a new episode of All Things Xbox Podcast. Once again, I've got Logan with me. Logan, how you doing this week?
Doing pretty good. All things are good in the Xbox world. We got a big showcase this Sunday. There's some other showcases coming up, and life's good. How about you, Jamie? How you doing in the burning British Isles?
I'm melting. I can't stand heat. like British people aren't made for heat, and we don't have air conditioning over here, so it's by the end of this podcast, I'm just going to be this little puddle on the ground. But all that aside, it's been a good week. Gaming news has actually been really positive. Got a lot of cool stuff to talk about. Even got a random Godzilla -1 shadow drop the other day on Netflix. That was weird. We might talk about that in a bit. But this is a gaming podcast, and before we get into all the topics, which we have a crap ton of, Logan, what have you been playing this past week?
Well, I finally finished the System Shock remake, and it was incredible. And I see why it was, the granddaddy of them all, the modern immersive sim game, like inspired Bioshock, Prey, Dishonored, all those. It's just Night Dive did mastercraft work remaking it, and it's super good. I can't wait till the sequel comes. Like, should be later this year, earlier next year. And so just finished that, was awesome. Have been I started playing Humanity on Game Pass, which is a fun little calm puzzle game where you play as a basically an angel dog or like a spirit dog, and you have to guide souls to heaven. And so you have to go on these puzzle pathways and like move people around on big squares and platforms and tight corridors and get them to the light so that they can ascend. And it's just kind of a peaceful, chill, change of pace game. Been playing that. Um, I played a little bit of Gun Valkyrie, and man, that's an OG Xbox Sega game. Really fun. The combat's good. I like the characters and narrative, the style, but it has one of the worst controller configuration schemes I have ever seen in my life. It is awful. Like, I don't know how they designed it, but everything seems backwards for vision and control scheme. And the game is fun, but man, it it feels like you're like trying to walk a line and you have, someone's drunk too much and you're just kind of wobbly. It's just the control scheme makes no sense, but the game is fun. And then after that, I decided, you know what? Now's a good time for a Black Ops campaigns playthrough again, with the showcase coming up and the game releasing soon. So I'm on the first game right now. How about you, man? What have you been up to?
Well, I just finished an indie game called Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. Or Brothers, whatever it's called.
Remake or
The original, well, the remaster on Xbox One.
okay?
It turns out I played it back in the day. I just don't remember it. But just finished it. What a game! What a game! People need to play that. The remake has co-op modes, and I think the Switch version of the remaster also has the 2-player co-op. But super fun game, very heart touching, but really good. Also been playing Lost Judgment. The funny thing about Lost Judgment is, right, it has less side content than the first game, but I'd say the side content's even better, which is really nice. Characters, all that stuff is the best. And weirdly enough, I should have finished for Hellblade 2 by now. The truth is, I haven't touched it in about a week because Fallout 4 has taken my life. um, I, I'm in love with Fallout 4. Fallout 4 is amazing. And I didn't play it for 9 years due to a stupid reason. Admittedly, I don't know what I was thinking. It broke my OCD or whatever you want to call it, but I'm loving Fallout 4. And I don't understand the discourse around Fallout 4. Like, there's this, like, weird fan base. I don't want to say weird fan base, but there's this part of the Fallout fan base. They just hate on Fallout 4, and I can't figure out why. Is it because the dialogue isn't as deep as the other Fallout games? Maybe. But personally, I'm loving Fallout 4. The graphics still look good. I'm playing in a 4K mode with the performance turned on, so 4K visuals, highest fidelity at 60 frames, and there's no frame dips at all, which I absolutely love. It's great. It's great, and I think going from Starfield to Fallout 3 has just been really nice because Starfield is incredible. That's another Bethesda RPG, which I'm sure people are familiar with. But going from one to the other is just, I don't know, it just felt good. But outside of that, just a bunch of indie games. I've been playing that cat game, Little Kitty Big City. As someone that's had cats my entire life, I can be an annoying little sod like one of them. So that's been nice. you know,
Yeah.
my cat Luke is exactly like that. Just he'll knock things over because why not? They're there to knock over. And personally, sometimes I place things in certain areas so he'll knock them off just to trick him. Anyway, that's pretty much it. I sometimes lose track of time. By the way, while all this is going on and all these games I've been playing this past week, I've still got that part of me, in the back of my mind, going, start your next playthrough of Mass Effect Legendary Edition. I haven't started it this year, so that's coming at some point. I might live stream it. I don't know. But anyway, we've got a lot of topics to go over because there's a lot, and there's some stuff we're probably going to complain about because I want to talk about the Jeff Keighley thing. You know what? Let's talk about the Jeff Keighley thing now.
Wrap it up.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk about the Jeff Keighley thing now. So, like, all the summer showcases are just around the corner. I think gamers should be excited. Xbox gamers should be excited. After the first few months of this year, what was like online, enjoy the next week. It's going to be a good week. There's the Ubisoft showcase on the 10th. There's the IGN Indie showcase on, I think that's Thursday. I'm not entirely sure. I think that's Thursday, yeah. And then there's Jeff Keighley show on the 7th. And then there's the Xbox double showcase on Sunday. Really cool stuff. But Summer Games Fest, Jeff Keighley's big show. It gets hyped up for months and months and months. It's our replacement of E3. Before I continue and before I start my mega rant, we have our first super chat of the day by Nick W. Thank you very much for the $10. He says, I've been Crash Bandicoot 2, still fantastic all these years later. What console do you think has the best launch lineup? I think it's 360. Ooh, that's a good question. I think the best launch lineup for any console, I think the 360, maybe alongside the GameCube. I think the
GameCube was incredible.
Yeah, GameCube had a great launch. I think in the UK that launched with what? Luigi's Mansion and Mario Sunshine. I remember it launching with two major titles like that. But the Xbox 360 had a great launch lineup because you basically launched with a Perfect Dark, which was huge at the time. People love Perfect Dark, and I get so nostalgic about the 360. Logan, what would you think is the best launch lineup for a console?
I don't know. It's really tough because, I mean, even if you want to go handhelds, Game Boy Color and Game Boy Pocket, had the Pokemon Red and Blue, and you've got, N64 had some incredible, Super Mario 64 and, some big titles for it. GameCube, Luigi's Mansion, 360. You had, Perfect Dark Zero, and, just not long after Oblivion. There were some just truly incredible games in those. The Xbox One, for as much as people like to tear it a new one, had a really good launch lineup as well. That was not its problem. Its problem was messaging, and that's a whole story. That horse is mush by now. But the launch lineup of it was really good. I'll tell you what didn't have a good launch lineup, the Series X. But that's a story for another day.
Yeah, and you talk about launch lineups. I think I remember the PlayStation 2 one because I got one at launch. I think that came with Tekken Tag, a game where you fired fireworks in the sky, and Smuggler's Run. That was a Rockstar title back in the day.
Oh, I remember Smuggler's Run.
Yeah,
That was fun.
yeah, it was super fun, and like you basically had these huge open maps, but none of the missions were open world. It was basically race from point A to point B, carrying whatever smuggling stuff you're smuggling, whatever. And it was just super fun. Rockstar used to be so original back then. But Nick W, thank you for the $10. Just got me thinking because launch titles back in the day, they were like something people really talked about. I'd say with the Xbox Series XS and even the PlayStation 5, like launch titles weren't really the big thing that people talked about. People talk about tech now. But like the 360, original Xbox, PlayStation 2, GameCube, N64, original PlayStation. Actually, I can't even remember what the original PlayStation launched with. I was too young. But I remember there was a bunch of stuff there. But yeah, I think I would. Microsoft's in such a good place now with the amount of studios they have. I do like the idea of that when they launch their next generation console and they push in this, uber technology stuff, right? I think they'll have a great launch lineup. I really do. I do think they'll have things like Blade and maybe Elder Scrolls and stuff. But I think one of the cool things about launch games is that they used to present these like really like fun and different gameplay opportunities. Like the 360 launching with a big 3D platformer and a new first-person shooter was a big deal. The N64 launching with the definitive 3D platformer was a huge deal. The PlayStation 2 that launched with Tekken Tag. Tekken Tag looked leagues better than Tekken 3. And Smuggler's Run that looked fantastic. But the GameCube, like those games look way superior compared to the 64. But yeah, launch titles, I'd love to get to a point where we get back to like the early 2000s or something where launch titles for all consoles are just way different than each other, providing different experiences. And that was the big advantage back then. Even Nintendo still does that stuff. They tend to do they put some new technology in their controllers or a new way to play, and they make games around that tech. That's really cool for them. And well, we're probably pretty much going to see the next Switch launch in the next year, and let's see if they do something interesting there with launch titles. Now, Jeff Keighley. Jeff Keighley clearly was hyped about the end of E3. E3's been a staple in gaming for as long as I can remember, and I've always wanted to go since I was a child. Always wanted to go, and in 2020, to help my channel grow, I was actually planning to go to E3. Right, so for me, it was like going to be like going to Disney World, Christmas 2.0. And then everything happened with the pandemic. That was going to be the first year Warner Brothers Games was going to have their very first E3 showcase. And considering I love a lot of their games, it was heartbreaking to me for that to happen. And, the pandemic happened. Everyone had these streams from home and stuff. And E3 never came back, and it's done. And Jeff Keighley was so happy to have basically the quote-unquote definitive, like, summer showcase. I'm doing air quotes. I'm not on camera yet. And I kind of think that's sad. Like, someone that's been in the gaming space as long as him should realize that E3 back in the day used to be for retailers and journalists. Retailers would find out about the upcoming games. Journalists would talk about them. And that's how we would find about games. And then in the early 2000s, it became more about a media thing. And then in the late 2000s and early 2010s, it became more about content creators and showing games to the public via live streams. Now, gamers as a whole loved E3. Whether, like, by the way, we will talk about some other stuff later when it comes to like Sony Showcase and the Xbox games they had there. Every console manufacturer and publisher has at some point had an absolutely terrible showcase. Every single manufacturer, especially Ubisoft. Ubisoft's had some legendarily crap live streams, like amazingly crap. Um, if anyone ever gets bored, watch the 2010 Konami E3. It's the worst E3 showcase of all time. It's amazing. They don't show any games hardly, and it's just people talking on stage. Um, but like Jeff Keighley doesn't really get the point of the whole E3 thing. It's about people meeting up now, or at least it was, enjoying these new games, talking about these new games, covering them. And it just seems like every one of these showcases now has to be about E3. Sorry, has to be about Jeff Keighley. Right? We have Gamescom, the European E3. It's the biggest games expo in all of Europe. People look forward to it every year. Like 300,000 people go every year. It's ridiculous. And then you have Jeff Keighley, who does this opening night live in LA, hosted by Jeff Keighley for a German game show. That never made sense to me. And, the Game Awards is him, and I think he does a fantastic, job with the Game Awards now. But Summer Games Fest is just pushed as this E3 alternative that I just don't like. And every single year now, all of his shows, he does this. He hypes it up for months, teases things on Twitter, and even reset it, right? And then days before the show starts, he says, temper your expectations. That's what annoys me. And it annoys me when any person from any company does that, because people get excited for these things. We only get one summer showcase every year, really. Like one time every year we get to enjoy these new game announcements. And Jeff Keighley just like I don't know, like just hype, temper your expectations. And it's like, no, people shouldn't temper their expectations, because in 2020 and 2021 we're stuck in the house. Things still feel weird. Like, Logan, you have to admit, things still kind of feel odd.
Yeah, things are finally feel normal again for the most part. Not entirely, but for the most part where I live anyway. It's been a long time coming, and people want the good old days back, and they're tired of, the drip feed, news content. Remember how awful it was for a couple years, like how they did the news content?
Yeah. Yeah. the, the, the summer showcase Xbox had, where they were all doing it from webcams. Because,
Oh, that was hideous.
yeah. And the thing is, there was no preparation because nobody knew we would be staying at home. But, like, when I'm watching a showcase and I think, wow, I have a better microphone than they do, that's a problem. But, finally now we have these great, showcases. Like, the Xbox showcase last year was well shot, well filmed, and all that stuff. But, the Jeff Keighley showcase is, he's clearly a good producer. He just needs to get some hosts, because last year, this is how the format went. Developer comes out on stage, talks to Jeff Keighley, trailer shown, release date. And then it's the cycle over and over again. So we should be talking about the game and maybe the developer, but not the presenter. We don't need a presenter on stage. Just show game. But anyway, we should temper our expectations for the 7th. Summer Games Fest, the replacement for E3. It's not going to replace E3. It never will. It just won't. Ever. Take that to the bank. Logan, what's your thoughts on that? Because, hype, and then temper your expectations.
Yeah, it's kind of it almost feels a little damage control-y, or just, I don't know, it kind of like ringmaster, like trying to wheel people in and then kind of suppress it, so then you can maybe surprise them, or go, well, see, the ratings weren't that bad because of this or that. And I don't know, it gets a kind of annoying when someone, no matter who they are, tries to become the sole face of something and just try to gobble up the entire industry coverage and stuff, and make it to where, there's one place to go, and it's like there are a whole bunch of other things going on as well. And there was actually that funny report from, Wario64, who I'm sure everybody knows, but in case for some reason you don't, Wario 64 is like the biggest deal, um, tweeter out there. He'll tweet deals from all kinds of places for all kinds of games, movies, you know, all your needs in the electronics world. That's where you go. And he since Neubel kind of retired, I guess,
Yeah.
or Nibel, he retired. He's basically taken over that front too and does news as well. And so he had shared something that basically it looked like Jeff Keighley was trying to acquire the rights to something else. And it fell through. And then Jeff Keighley immediately was like, no, 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 there's no accuracy to that whatsoever. And it just it adds further credence to the idea of trying to take sole ownership of the gaming media circuit, and how E3 being gone is a bad thing. I don't care what anybody says. I miss E3 for what it was.
Yeah, it does seem like he wants to be the face of gaming. You know, if anyone ever gets like invited to like an American talk show, like I don't know if they still do Conan O'Brien or something, like you get Jeff
Yeah,
Keighley
they
on.
do.
Okay, well, Jeff Keighley would be the person to get. And the thing is, I respect the guy. I really do. You know, the Game Awards. I think what the Game Awards was in the early 2010s and late 2000s, like it was terrible. Like it was kind of embarrassing what they were trying to what they were pushing with gaming. Like it's hard to explain without getting demonetized. But like just the whole format, like they were aiming at like the whole dude bro thing and like just really pushing to that. They had some like certain entertainers on stage presenting Game Awards, which fell out of place. And like the Game Awards is better now. It's a great showcase now. Although yeah, so the Game Awards last year, and this was heartbreaking to me. I've been wanting Remedy to get more attention for a long time, and there was a lot of there was a lot of people coming to get awards that didn't have English as their first language. So you have Sam Lake going up to get an award, who isn't his first language isn't English, and he was told to wrap it up. That really, really got to me last year. Like you're telling these people that I don't understand. We can get Kojima out on stage for 10 minutes, almost crying, getting excited about his new game, and yet we can't give people that win awards to have their own time to talk about, like, thanking the families, the co-workers, all that stuff. That was kind of disgusting last year. And, like, not even all of the awards are given out on stage. What is the point of having, like, you have 10 esports awards? Like, who really thinks, wow, I'm glad Timothy What's-its-face won, best esports coach? Who the hell's that? Nobody cares. like, just do something. Anyway, rant over. Jeff Keighley, Summer Games Fest has the potential. Like, do we want a replacement for E3? Honestly, no. I don't want a replacement. Do you know what I want back? E3. Some other company can take it over, do it somewhere else, maybe cheaper. But it has to be like Summer Games Fest is run by one person. Like, that isn't good because people always have preferences. Maybe they push that, maybe they don't. But like E3 was great because you'd have Xbox do their thing, Nintendo do theirs, Ubisoft, PlayStation, everyone. And it was just this like really cool play because we used to go and watch E3 and you knew where you're going to watch these streams, at what times, and it was very consistent. Now you have the IGN Indie Showcase, you have Summer Games Fest, you have Ubisoft doing their own thing, which they also have some in-person event, and you also have the Xbox Showcase, but that's live streamed, and there's also in-person meetings. Like I want to go next year, by the way. I want to try and go to like the Xbox Summer Showcase next year, but like going to see all of them must be a pain in the behind because, like, I can't imagine, like, scheduling all that stuff. Anyway, rant over. Logan, do you want to say anything else on the Jeff Keighley Summer Games Fest tempering expectations before we move on?
No, I guess all I'd say is that apparently there will be a few announcements, but it will mainly be updates on things we already know about, and Judas won't be there, and a few of the other Wolf Among Us 2 won't be there, and there was another major title or two that won't be there that people thought would be. So I even tweeted about it and said this is one I'll probably just catch a recap on. But if you really want to see him dance up there with his puppets, then go ahead and you might have a good time.
Yeah. I just saw Nick in chat mention the whole Christopher Judge had like 8 minutes or something to like do his speech that like 2 years ago. Like, and then Sam Lake doesn't get a minute. Oh god, I could talk for hours about that. Anyway, so yeah, everyone temper your expectations because it's stuff we already know about. And the thing is, I don't really have a problem with like updates on games we know about because in the past we've had game reveals that are just logos, PNGs, maybe CGI trailers. Like if they want to show gameplay for something that's had a CGI trailer, I'm perfectly fine with that. But I just don't like the idea of hyping something up for months and then saying last minute, "Hey, calm yourself." It's like look at Xbox, right? They've said that in the past and nobody liked that. Right? Nobody likes being told temporary expectations. Fortunately, this year, like Aaron Greenberg said this morning or something like that, saying that, oh yeah, they've been planning this for 6 months. Like no one from Xbox has said temporary expectations. No one said anything like that. They're just really hyped, which is good for all of us. Anyway, we'll move on. Hopefully, Summer Games Fest is okay. And if anything, we probably will see Resident Evil there in some capacity, I think. Anyway, okay, so Wonder Woman. We'll get this news story out quick. Wonder Woman, which is a single-player action-adventure game made by Monolith, and they are the developers of the Shadow of Mordor games. And if people haven't played them, they really should. Really fun games. Apparently, they're having some trouble developing the game. The game industry is a weird place because Warner Brothers, they clearly have success with single-player titles. But they are wanting to push live service in everything. And that blows my mind. Out of all of the third-party publishers, they must clearly see that, hey, all the money they make, single-player titles, but they want to push into, like, live service. And I just don't understand what... Like, Logan, can you think, like a publisher such as Warner Brothers that has huge success in single-player? Hogwarts Legacy, previous Batman games and all that stuff, and now they want to push live service elements in single-player stuff.
Yeah, it's almost like an old EA playbook kind of thing, or like Ubisoft at some points in their tenure. But honestly, I'm not surprised that they're making bad decisions because that seems to be the Warner Brothers brand right now. Like they're potentially about to lose the NBA, licensing for basketball and stuff, or broadcasting, which is a huge deal. They're inside the NBA thing. Their HBO Max or whatever it is pales in comparison to what it used to be, and they're planning on upping the price again for the premium without ads right before House of Dragon 2 season starts. And it just seems on brand that they're making, head over backwards type decisions right now.
I just don't get these companies. Paramount, they've messed up a lot. I could talk for about 8 hours how they've mismanaged the Star Trek IP. Like, Star Trek is so mismanaged, I could cry. Although we do have Strange New World Season 3 coming, so that's good. Warner Brothers, like, they just need to get their act together. Whoever, like, runs these companies, they clearly need to get their head out of their behind because, like, Hogwarts Legacy is a great example, right? It had, like, massive I'm doing air quotes, massive controversy before release, and it somehow became the best-selling game of 2023. Best-selling game. And it's a single-player title. There's no live service elements at all. And, like, as far as we know, there's not going to be any expansions. There was they dropped an update, they dropped the update on the 6th where there's going to be photo mode and all that stuff. Really cool, most requested feature. But, like, they made so much money off a single-player game, which, from what I know, Warner Brothers didn't actually have much faith in it. So, like they want to put the money into live service. Other publishers are doing this. It's not just Warner Brothers. Sony, they putting time into live service. Ubisoft, they putting more live service elements in their games. Hell, Rainbow Six now has a subscription model. Like that kind of
That's gross.
yeah, like
Ugh.
you have this full price premium game. Okay, get it. Okay, but it also has skins and operators you can buy. Okay, cool. And now there's a subscription service. Like and we've talked about this before. I don't have a problem with subscription services. I just don't. But when you've gone from having battle passes, season passes, DLC, microtransactions, to an extent, I can be fine with. But a subscription for a premium game, that that just doesn't make sense. Anyway, Warner Brothers, hopefully they get things on track because they have the potential to be the best third-party publisher. With the IPs they have, the studios they have, they just need to let them make what they want. Like shoving live service in games just doesn't work. And this cycle's happened before, by the way. I just don't think developers remember it. Back in the, I'd say late 2000s, early 2010s, remember when a cool game would come out like Dead Space 2 or Tomb Raider, and there'd be this tacked on multiplayer mode? Like every single game for about 5 years, whether it's good, whether it was good or bad, had a weird tacked on multiplayer mode. Like, didn't not Dead Space, Bioshock 2 also have multiplayer?
Yes, it's like Tomb Raider, Bioshock 2, Dead Space. Like, there were a bunch of games. It's like, what are you doing here?
Yeah, like Batman Arkham Origins has a tacked on third person shooter multiplayer mode. Like, why? Like, why are you here? But back then, developers saw the amount of money Call of Duty was making, and people buying map packs. So every developer was putting this weird tacked on multiplayer mode. None of them succeeded. Mass Effect 3's multiplayer succeeded, but that was amazing. But like, none of these games like had any success when it came to multiplayer. And then what happened? Developers eventually stopped putting money into tacked on multiplayer modes, and gamers were hyped. We're like, finally, it was money wasted. You didn't need to put this time, effort, and resources into this mode nobody plays. You fast forward 10, 14 years or whatever, it's happening again. Right? Rather than having tacked on multiplayer modes to games people like, we now have full live service models across the board for almost everything. And publishers aren't learning. And the sad thing is, developers, they put their heart and soul into these games, whether they like it or not. Publishers won't see a return on these games, and people will lose their jobs. And that is bloody sad. I hate the fact that everything is becoming a live service. Polygon put out an article the other day about how AAA titles can't be, single platform anymore. It's like, no, the industry's screwed because everyone's putting money in the wrong places. I don't know. I could rant all day. Like, we'll talk about the Sony thing quickly because they did have some Xbox games there. Logan, overall, what did you think of the Sony State of Play?
It was one of the worst ones they've ever had. It point blank, it was pretty awful. They had some indies that I liked and enjoyed. Astrobot looks really cute and fun. Like, I've got a PS5, so I'll play that. That looks fun to me. Um, Concord, looks like the Guardians of the Galaxy we have at home. But it's a live service, just like, and again, how do you go from, you have this big opening for it to then, another like drop thing for it, and it just, I don't know, they just have mismanaged the debut of that so much. And it seems like the internet is pretty near universally against it. And it just, honestly, it's been a pretty rough year for them, which makes it feel even more egregious that, Xbox hasn't, seized momentum or taken a big chunk out of the lead right now. The opportunity is there. have a killer showcase, you can make up some ground. Because Sony is definitely not hitting grand slam home runs right now. Like, they are treading water and just banking on folks to stay with them because they are Sony. Like, the lane's open. Take it.
Yeah, I mean, like the Concord thing, like people know that I do not play multiplayer that much. I play Fall Guys with two of my friends, and I play Call of Duty with one of them. Like that is it. So like multiplayer for me, I don't really play much. And especially these, what do you call them, hero shooters. I don't like them. I tried Overwatch. It's not for me. I just can't get into it. But I think like it comes to the point where like the market's not really, I would say, oversaturated. It's that gamers just don't want to move to other things. Like Destiny is pretty much the biggest live service game that has MMO style elements, right? It's a first person shooter with live service elements. And then you have The Division, which is the third person military version. Every single game that's tried to copy Destiny or Division has failed. Like Anthem, they left the bloody Christmas lights on. Then you have Avengers. That game was meant to get like multiple years of free content, and the one expansion we did get didn't even have its own achievements. What the hell were they thinking? But like people that are on Division or on Destiny, they are sticking with those titles. They're not looking at an alternative. So you have Overwatch, and what? There's basically two games like Overwatch, really, if you think about it. There's Overwatch and there's Paladins. Well, those gamers aren't going to go anywhere else. So it's like, I don't understand why the industry is so... they want to bank so much on live service when, like, I put it like this, I've never paid a penny into a live service model, right? I've bought one season pass, or should I say a battle pass, off Fall Guys, and Microsoft paid for it. So technically I haven't spent a penny. And I just don't understand, like I've never spent money on a live service game, but do you know what I would buy? Single player games. I'll buy single player games all day. I've no interest in putting multiplayer, but I should say putting money in multiplayer. And there's a lot of people like me. People are kind of sick of the live service stuff. And
Hey, can you hear me, Jimmy?
yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, sorry, the rain knocked me out for a minute, but I'm back.
Yeah, that's fine. It's all good. Like I don't understand the push for live service, especially like Sony. Sony and Microsoft were looked at two different ways for such a long time. You have Microsoft, which was always called the Dude Bro box, the live service box. But if you look at all the games in development, it's all single player. All their games are single player, And then you have Sony, who were known to make like big single player, AAA, tentpole like exclusives, and they clearly shifting to live service models. Like, and Microsoft, they already have live service models covered. And the thing about live services, they get money constantly throughout a year. It's not just the initial release. They get money off Overwatch, Call of Duty, not FIFA, Forza, Halo, Gears, Minecraft, because people buy the expansions all the time and the skin packs. Like, Sony doesn't really have that live service game where people play consistently and spending money. And I understand that they need that game. And they do. They really do need that game. But, like, just looking at the market, there isn't an active fan base out there really clamoring for a new hero shooter. They do have IP I think would work well in a modern, like, setting, like Twisted Metal. If you could come out with a really cool car combat game, make that a live service, they can make that work. It's not really a saturated market, and not really many developers are covering it. There's a Warhammer racing combat game coming out later this year, which looks pretty good actually. But outside of that, there aren't really many car combat titles. It's weird. But the Sony showcase overall, I thought Astro Bot looked cool. I mean, Astro Bot, it's a platformer. You know what you're getting. Platformers are cool. The gameplay looks fun. The characters are cute. It's everything you want in a platformer. But the showcase, it was pretty bad. And the thing is, I think Sony had a really good state of play this time last year, where Assassin's Creed Mirage and Alan Wake gameplay were revealed. We have another super chat by Nick W. Thank you very much for the $2. So he said SOCOM would work. SOCOM, exactly. We don't have a third-person military shooter. Not really. Ghost Recon Breakpoint made a lot of Ghost Recon fans mad, including myself. triggered, if you will, because the game was broken at launch. It was missing features. And then eventually, and I mean eventually, they actually put in features people wanted. Basic, bare bones features. And now I actually think Ghost Recon Breakpoint is a good game. And I highly recommend people play it if they want a third-person military shooter. But when it comes to third-person military shooters in the, live service space and multiplayer space, there aren't really any. None. It's either first-person shooters with military and live service models such as Overwatch. It's weird. Like, Sony's sitting on IP which would do so well in the space because nobody else is making games. So yeah, like Nick said, SOCOM, Twisted Metal. You could probably do Parappa the Rapper in like some sort of way. It's weird because I think gamers are really craving some fresh ideas, and this generation has proven overall we're just getting more of the same, just with prettier graphics. Hellblade was doing some different stuff, which is really cool, but like for the most part, most games we see every year, it's the same. It's the same game, just prettier, But hey, I'm sure Sony, like, people think I'm hating on Sony. Like, in the future, I'm sure they'll have some great shows. Microsoft in the future might have some bad shows. It's the cycle. It happens all the time, Anyway, we'll move on. Back onto some Xbox stuff. Okay, we'll get this out of the way quick. Limited run games. Now, if people like collector's editions, you may have purchased a bunch of things from them. They now do a bunch of Xbox versions of games, and they recently came out and talked about why they don't do reprints. And it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. They don't do reprints of games or reruns of games because they would be breaking their promise of being limited. That's the stupidest thing. So you have a product that has demand and you're unwilling to supply it. Now, I did business at college, but even anyone that didn't do business at college, or anyone, a hamster would know this, right? If you have demand, you create supply. And like Logan, I know you were annoyed about this because you told me about it, but like limited run games not wanting to make more copies of their popular titles because they'll be breaking some crappy little promise that doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, it's manufactured scarcity for just the point of, trying to promote an image of prestige. Like being real, like these are physical prints of games that have been mainly digital. There have been a few that were not going to be published otherwise, and they've been able to bring to West, like Clock Tower. I'm really happy for that. I'm really glad. They said it sold well for pre-orders physically, so that's a good sign. Like, keep doing that. Keep bringing games that wouldn't happen at all, to Western audiences like Clock Tower. And, keep making physical editions for as many people as want them. Like, you're not Rolls Royce, you're not, like Ferrari, where it's like a Ferrari Enzo or something, where only people who have been, in the Ferrari family for so long are given the honor or prestige of being able to buy one. It is a physical print of a game everybody could buy for $20, 20 to $40 digitally if they didn't want a physical edition. People are willing to give you money and willing to, want to collect these things and support your business because they like this. The idea of, well, no, we're just gonna, keep it, on a low threshold so that it's more premium and more, exclusive. Like, that is just, that's circus business.
Yeah. And the thing is, what really annoys me is that you have major companies now are relying on them to do their collector's editions. So EA is the big one. They basically let limited run games make the Jedi Fallen Survivor collector's edition, which was a replica of Cal Kestis's lightsaber. I wanted that so much, and it sold out in about the time it takes for a fly to fart, right? It was stupid. And by the way, in my opinion, it's one of the best looking lightsabers in all of Star Wars. Like,
It's pretty awesome.
yeah, it's a cool looking lightsaber, and like, I was just so annoyed by it. They also did the Dead Space collector's edition. At least that's where it was available in the UK. It's like, stop it! I've never heard a good story about limited run games ever. People complain about getting products late. If you like, Xbox fans have been clamoring for, physical versions of particular games, and they keep saying, "Oh, more Xbox games are coming." And I think I've seen one person on Twitter say they've gotten like their pre-order of collector's edition. That's stupid. It's like, there has to be more companies that do this. And by the way, the person, I think he was like the CEO of something of limited run games, he said that just because we finished doing our run of this game doesn't mean anyone else can't do their own run. Dude, there's not like 50 companies like limited run games just out there like making their own little like versions of game discs and stuff. Like that, it's stupid. It's stupid, and it's one of the reasons why I've never purchased a limited run game, because I don't trust them. And it's a shame because they've put out games before I've really wanted, but like the UK cost, because their import prices are stupid. Like postage and packaging costs that much. Really? No, it doesn't. But yeah, I think people need to be really careful with limited run games, because again, I wouldn't trust them as far as I can throw them. Anyway, we'll move on. Okay, Xbox is coming out with a new controller. Now, that isn't news because that happens every day of the week. However, this is a third-party controller made by Hyperkin. It's called the Dutch S, with a capital S at the end. It releases on the 21st of August. It's in the original Xbox S controller design. So if you're a fan of the smaller redesigned controller of the original Xbox, brand new controller coming out. It's got bumpers. It's got Hall effect thumbsticks, which are very good, by the way. Means you'll never get stick drift. It's got modern ergonomics, so the backs feel more comfortable. Precision impulse triggers and a share button. So it looks really cool. It's also a wired controller. It has a 3mm jack for your headphones and stuff. I might pick one up. The problem is in the UK, Hyperkin's products sell out super quick because the stock just isn't that good. Logan, do you think you'd be picking one up? Because it is another retro style controller, but it looks pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I kind of want one, but I also have like the limited edition Cortana Duke, with the LED, screen, touch screen that boots up with the OG Xbox and Halo stuff, and then I was thinking about getting one of the 360 ones, maybe the wired ones. So I don't feel like I need another OG Xbox controller, just a little different, but it's super cool for those who missed out or want another one. And I'm glad they're making it for people, because this isn't manufactured scarcity. This is giving people what they would like to have. It's great.
Yeah, I am going to pick up a 360 one at some point because, again, sold out. Like, I want my nostalgia with my 360 controller. Anyway, just thought I'd talk about that quickly. A bunch of new games. So, there's a game coming out to Xbox later this year. It's called Delta Force Hawk Ops. Now, isn't that the most military name you've heard for a video game? Like, why not? Okay, but anyway, super cool looking military first-person shooter. It's got a single-player mode and multiplayer modes. Highly recommend people pay attention to it because, again, it falls in between the Call of Duty and Battlefield space. So if people have been wanting more military shooters, because we don't actually have many on console at the minute, outside of Call of Duty and Battlefield, to want to keep people's eyes on. And the next up, and this was a topic last week, which we forgot to talk about, Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D coming to Xbox officially. Now, that is fantastic news. Square Enix, they're learning. Baby steps, but they're learning. The game looked fantastic when it was first shown off. I think it was like 3 years ago. And it just came out today that Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D is actually a remake of the first 3 games now. So, the game looks fantastic. I'm going to be picking this up whenever it comes out. We may be hearing about it pretty soon, considering the Instagram account put out a little video the other day. Logan, what do you think about this? Because a new Dragon Quest game, even though it is a HD 2D remake. It's a big deal.
I'm super stoked. I'm new to the Dragon Quest franchise for the most part. Like I have 11, but I haven't beaten it. And getting to play the original ones and basically a collection, like the first 3 remade. Count me in. That sounds awesome, man. I have a feeling that won't be the only Square stuff we see coming to Xbox in the near future.
Yeah, and it kind of came out today, as you said. Octopath Traveler 2 is coming to Xbox. It was kind of already announced, but it's also coming to Game Pass, and it looks like it'll be coming to Game Pass soon. I'd be shocked if that doesn't launch next week, like on Sunday during the show, because why not? Shadow drops are all cool and that. Before we get into the other big topics, I want to talk about this game quick called Wayfinder, and they are doing the best thing, and I think more developers need to do this. We talk about live service games not always working. We talk about the amount of games that fail in this space. Well, there's this game coming out called Wayfinder. It's an MMO. I apologize for the police car going past if people can hear it. So this MMO called Wayfinder looks super cool. It's a class-based MMO, and it turns out they had some falling out with their publisher. And what they're doing is that they've reworked the game and they're launching it as a full-on single-player game without microtransactions later this year. Praise. And it's only going to cost, I think, $29.99 in dollars. So you're going to be getting a lot of content, basically MMO amount of content for a single-player game at $30. That's bloody good value, but I love the fact that they've taken a game that may have failed because of the space it's in, and they've transformed it into a single player title with no microtransactions. It's already on Steam in early access. It's also on PlayStation in early access, I think, or in some form. I think there's a demo out, but it's coming to Xbox Series X and S later this year. And it's gonna have like a bunch of like digital goodies and stuff. But like Logan, what do you think about that? Because taking a game that may have failed or just being cancelled and transforming it into a single player game.
I like that. I think that's really creative. And frankly, I wish a lot more studios would try that. Like, if a game fails, go back to the drawing board and look at, okay, why did it fail? Like, maybe there's, the base and foundation are good, but there's just a few small things we could tweak and re put it out there and try again in a different revised format. And maybe it would, you know, stick the landing and do well. So I'm happy to see them doing that, and I'll check it out.
Yeah, I just love that because I think like as going forward, I would love developers to like just put out more games like that. Like live service games fail all the time. These MMOs come out all the time and they fail. And I'm not saying the game I'm about to talk about is failing, but like look at Star Wars: The Old Republic, right? You can play most of that content single player. Like I honestly don't know why they don't repackage that content as a single player game and charge for it. Like I'd buy it day one. Like like why not? And by the way, there's a bunch of MMOs that you do actually play single player. Star Trek Online, 90% of the content single player. Star Wars: The Old Republic, single player. The Elder Scrolls Online, which has over 20 million players, single player. Most of the gameplay is single player. So, I would like more games to be repackaged as single player titles, basically. But hey, it's a good move, and I think people should check it out when it launches later this year. Plus, it's a good price. Okay. This is a good one. Before we get into the rest of the topics, have to do me a little ad. If you're enjoying the show, please like, share, and subscribe. It really does help the channel out, and I am still a growing channel. The podcast and all the channel and all that stuff. I can't speak today for some reason. I apologize. Super chats are live if you want to support the channel and all that stuff. Anyway, Kenner Bridge of Spirits. It was a title that came to PlayStation. I think it may have been a launch title or a launch window title. And it kind of just looks like a Pixar film or DreamWorks film. It looks really, really cool. Has like this really bubbly art style. And the developers kind of hinted for a while that it would come to Xbox. But anyway, it was officially announced for Xbox just yesterday. It's coming to Xbox this August. It's coming to Xbox Series XS and Xbox One consoles. I'm going to be picking it up. What about you, Logan? Because the announcement came out of nowhere, but I think everyone saw it coming.
Yeah, I'm I'm very excited for this one. This is one that I wanted to play for a long time when it was first announced. So, and I had held out hope that it would come to Xbox. I could have picked it up on PlayStation a while back, but I kept thinking surely it was just a timed exclusive and it would eventually hit Xbox. Lo and behold, it did. 3 years later is a pretty wild timed exclusivity period, though, I have to say. 3 years, that's insane. But I'm glad it's on Xbox now, and I will be picking it up. It does look like that happy studio, Ghibli, Pixar kind of vibes, like action game, but kind of fairy tale, warm, cuddly, but also a little dark. Like it scratches all the boxes. It looks fun to me.
Yeah, it looks cool, and I think it. I really don't get these like timed deals. Like, did Kenner Bridge of Spirits sell consoles? I personally don't know. The game looks great. I'm going to be picking it up, but I just think in 2024 we're getting to a point there where I think we're going to see less of these deals. They just don't make much sense, you know. Like all the marketing that went towards that game happened years ago. You know, hell, the trailer they put out didn't really show gameplay. It just showed a few of the little creature things and some pirate hats, and then like the main character and with a white background. Like it wasn't much of a trailer. The game's going to be great, I'm sure, but like that game's marketing dollars have already been spent. It's why I think day and date with PC on all platforms makes sense because you get the maximum amount of advertising for that product on that platform, and it just works. So I think we're just going to see less of that, really. But yeah, just thought I'd talk about that quickly because I think there's a lot of people that have been wanting that. Next up, backwards compatibility. I talk about it all the time. Logan talks about it all the time, and I think on Xbox we've had access to backwards compatibility since 2015. When that announcement happened, that is the loudest audience pop of E3 ever, and I mean ever. And over time we got upgrades and stuff, but when the Xbox, like, was it Project Scarlet? Yeah, Project Scarlet. When that was basically announced, Microsoft announced that they ended the backwards compatibility program. The only thing that happened now is like stability updates. And then when the Xbox Series X and S launched, they said, "Hey, these games have 60 FPS boost, auto HDR. We haven't really had many added since." And then about a year later, they added 70 games to the backwards compatibility lineup, including 360 and Xbox games. So like that was our last batch apparently, and ever since I've been wanting more. I need more. There's still a lot of games stuck on 360, which I'll be covering soon in a future video. But there's a lot of games that people just want. I understand that the sports games they can't happen. A lot of racing games just can't due to licenses. Everyone knows that. But there's just games stuck on that platform that people just want. And there's been rumors for the past year that Microsoft are working on more backwards compatible games, especially that they have Activision now. And basically, the rights behind a bunch of those games is pretty much sorted because Microsoft owns them all now. And I have seen some accounts today, by the way, on Twitter saying that backwards compatibility is coming back and they look like official Xbox accounts, but I don't necessarily believe that they are. Just going off the things they've wrote on Twitter before. I could be wrong, but personally, I do want it to come back. I do think we will see some backwards compatible stuff this week. Be it maybe just some Activision stuff, but Xbox, they closed the 360 store next month. We got 19 years out of the Xbox 360 store. Very long time. And it's sad that they're closing it down, but I think just one last batch would go over really well because, of course, people want new games. And it's going to happen. Fortunately, Microsoft has a ton of studios now where we're going to be getting pretty much new games consistently. But I think there's still this fan base out there that we want our old games. We want more of our games back. Logan, I know you talk about BC pretty much as much as me. And the fact that we haven't really heard much about the backwards compatibility team for a while, like, something's got to give, right?
Yeah, I you know, I guess spoiler. It's one of my predictions for the showcase, which we'll get into later. But I firmly believe that we will get a last batch. One last dance to send off the BC. And I like you said, now that I understand that they have said that, look, the program we've exhausted this, but history, past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior. And, multiple times they have shut down the program and say, we've done what we can, we're closing down and moving on. Then they buy Bethesda. Well, now you have access to, a whole bunch of new studios and IPs you didn't have before. Then lo and behold, a while later, they have a big batch again, that anniversary batch for the 20th anniversary of Xbox, and they bring 70 something titles, including, some Bethesda and some other titles they didn't have before. And then they say, okay, we're done now again because we've exhausted. Well, a few months later, you buy one of the biggest publishers on the face of Earth. And one of the largest deal, like basically in media history. So you now own all these licenses and IPs and things that you didn't have before. So that opens things up again for you to add things, including some, last, snag, things that were holding back a few other ones, like a Quake 4 or a Wolfenstein '09 or Return to Castle Wolfenstein, Quake Wars. Like some of these games, like they were developed by one studio when before they were bought by this publisher, but then the rights were split between this publisher and this publisher, and it was just all convoluted mess. Now you own the whole thing. Like surely you can make Singularity, the Quake games, the Wolfenstein games at the very, very bare minimum BC. And like if you were able to figure out the licensing for the Marvel games, super. I wouldn't expect all of them, but if they could somehow get some of them, that would be incredible. The Transformer games, everybody's been, frothing wild for those. Like, if they could somehow get them done, Hasbro wants them done. They've put it out there on record. We want them back. We want them to be available again. Surely you can work something out. At the bare minimum, I do think we will get a few. If they don't, I would be very surprised and frankly very, very, very disappointed in Xbox. But I do think we will get a few.
Yeah, the funny thing you mentioned about the Transformers games is that, like, if they can figure out the licensing, because when it comes to Transformers, no company owns an exclusive license to that franchise. So indie developers, regular third party developers, they can make Transformers games if they acquire the license. So it's not like Spider-Man where it's just locked off to one like publisher. So that's why I think Transformers could come back. In the past year, there's been, or I should say, past year and a half, there's been multiple mobile Transformers games. There's been a Bumblebee game on Xbox, right, in PlayStation. Nobody played it because it's this tiny game that it was more of a children's game. But it's out there. It's an official Transformers game. And the funny thing is that when the Activision deal was first announced, Transformers War for Cybertron was trending in the UK at like 2 in the morning. So it's like there's this fan base out there that want those games. They need those Transformers games. And like I've been told nonstop for years how good those games are. And they came out in a weird time when I was dumb playing Call of Duty constantly and I was playing less single player games. I was dumb. I missed out on a lot of games. I still played a lot of single player games, like the Assassin's Creed, Batman's, and all that stuff. But I didn't play everything I should have, and that's why I've loved backwards compatibility because I get to play all these games I missed. Like I talk about binary domain all the time because I missed out on that back on 360, and when they made it backwards compatible, I purchased it the day of, and it's brilliant. It's amazing how such a good a third person shooter that is. And like I want that with Transformers so much where I actually bought the last 2 physical copies I could find in the United Kingdom sealed mint condition, perfect. So if they come out on Sunday and say, hey, these games are backwards compatible, and there's like Transformers images in there as well, I'm gonna frame these 2 sealed Transformers games because why not? But like Activision's back catalog, it's so rich and diverse. Like, think of all the Crash Bandicoot games, right? There's a bunch of Crash Bandicoot games from 360, one of which I had a lot of fun with, called Crash of the Titans. That was a super fun game. I think that was very underrated. I kind of got crapped on at the time because Crash Bandicoot games kind of went downhill for a little bit, but it's a super fun game. Like you said, the Marvel games, I don't know, but it'd be a shame that, 19 years down the line, the store shuts and we just don't get any more. And I get licenses can be an issue, but I know for a fact that there's certain games, which I'll be talking about in a video shortly, that there's no license issues. Like, there's certain games I just don't know why they aren't backwards compatible, which blows my mind, because that's easy money, right? Yeah, just thought I'd talk about that quickly because I love backwards compatibility. Logan loves it, and I'm sure a lot of Xbox fans do. In fact, I know that for a fact because if you go to the store, and I'm sure it's the same in the US, there's always a backwards compatible game or two in the top 10. Like, is that the same in the US, Logan?
Yep, almost always. Call of Duty, Fallout, Oblivion was for a while. Like, basically, that's another huge benefit of the backwards compatibility because it's like when a show happens or um a new entry in a series comes out, lo and behold, on your Xbox, you can actually play the entire franchise. And it boosts the whole franchise being able to have all of them in one place.
Yeah, one that's always popular in the UK, Skate 3. Skate 3 is always in the top 10. Always. Um, but it's like, it's easy money. These games still sell to the point where when Red Dead Redemption was made backwards compatible on Xbox in I think 2018, that was made backwards compatible. It actually charted in the top 10 of games released that month. That's crazy. And that was a super old game at that point, and it charted. Same with Call of Duty Black Ops. When Call of Duty Black Ops went on sale, so say when it went backwards compatible in 2017 or 2018, it charted in the UK. It was number one digitally, and it's like people still care about these games. And Logan, you talked about this the other day, how there's these detractors that don't like talking about old games. They laugh at old games, and like any game older than 3 years old is called an old game, and you get made fun of liking old games. Like, that's weird, isn't it?
It's insane. Like, you know, it's like they expect everybody to be a 10-second Tom and just like forget everything and just move on and just, go forward with no memory or no appreciation or no love for previous things. It's clown show behavior. Like, you know, how do you think we have these massive franchises and IPs to begin with? If everybody one and done Star Wars or Lord of the Rings or, you know, Star Trek, Batman, Spider Man, anything like that. And it was like, we have one movie, that's it. Ew, gross. It's older than 5 years. We don't want anything new. We only want new, 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 new. It's like, how do you build any attachment to something? Any, longevity, like character association, lore, development? Like, trilogies are trilogies for a reason. Sagas are sagas for a reason. You see a rise, a fall, a redemption, or a gradual build up or tear down, or you see a character go from some scrub to some like demigod, basically. Like it's just insane to me, and it's entitled, snobbish, just nuts behavior.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, if you're a PC gamer, you essentially have access to every game you've ever owned, basically. And that's the big benefit of PC gaming, that you have access to your entire back catalogue going back decades. On console, we haven't had that because of the weird shifting of architectures. Like, hell, the Xbox 360 was essentially a Mac in a console-shaped box. You had the PlayStation 3, which used its own cell architecture. Like, that's why backwards compatibility is nearly impossible for them, which they can actually fix. But like, it's like, why do you think these collections do well? The Tomb Raider remaster collection, they're still old games. They charted #1 in the UK. Fallout 3 was #4 in the UK. Fallout 3 was #4 in the UK. Fallout 4 was #1 in Europe, and it's a 9-year-old game. Right? So, like, the whole laughing at old games thing makes no sense to me, and it makes me wonder, like, do these people, like, do they not enjoy replaying games? And a lot of them do come from PlayStation fanboys, not fans, but fanboys. But like, do they not like revisiting games? Would they not like maybe their kids to visit these games down the line? Because, like, look, I love the fact that I can play games I missed out on. I love that. But like, let's say 10 years from now, people can't play a certain God of War game or Spider-Man game. Like, then they're gonna fail it. Then they'll realize, oh crap, I was wrong. But I just think it's a shame that so many people will just want to write things off as an old game. It's crazy to me. We're going to see more collections of old games. Like the GTA trilogy, it may be buggy, but it was one of the most anticipated games of the year it released because it's more GTA and it's some of the most beloved games ever made. It's crazy. I don't get that frame of thought. It's weird. It's weird. I mean, I've always replayed games ever since I was a kid. Same with movies. I'll rewatch movies. Hell, I've watched Dune Part 2 4 times now. And it's only June, right? So, like, when it comes to replaying games, I love to do that. I've replayed Mass Effect 1 11 times. 11 times. I may as well be a crazy person for saying that, but guess what? BioWare fans are crazy. We're crazy mad. And people like Dragon Age fans do the same. They will replay Dragon Age, hit New Game Plus the same night they finish it. It happens. Like,
it's true.
Yeah, it happens. Look at the Fallout fan base right now. There's people replaying these games, and there's a dev team. They are remaking Fallout 2 in first person. This news went live last night.
Saw that.
Yeah, and like, this is going to be a Steam game. It's made by like 100 different developers worldwide. I don't know how they're gonna legally release that on the store, but like, that's an old game. If you're seeing the screenshots, like, it's literally an old game. So I don't get it. Anyway, we'll move on. Hopefully, we'll see some BC stuff at the show, and I think we will. I think they will. And when it comes to the BC stuff, it's the upgrades as well. We haven't had more games added to frames per second boost, auto HDR, and things like resolution enhancement. Like, when resolution enhancement was first announced and shown off, it blew people away because you've got games like Final Fantasy 13, Red Dead Redemption, and Star Wars: The Force Unleashed, which still look like modern games. It's crazy. If people haven't played them yet, by the way, those 3 games I mentioned, and you have a Series X or Series S, play those games. They look like new titles. Essentially a free remaster. It's crazy. And frames per second boost, it's a game changer. You can play Mad Max, a 30 frames per second game, at 60 or 120, depending on your display. Like, that shouldn't be possible, considering there's no code touch, but it is. Anyway, we'll move on. Let's talk about Final Fantasy, because the showcase is just around the corner, and there's been rumors for months. I know Nick from Xbox Hours mentioned this, that we're going to see Final Fantasy 16 at the show. And there's been other rumors that we're going to see multiple Square Enix titles at the show. Square Enix is the only publisher, I'd say, on Xbox that doesn't really have a fan base, right? Nobody really likes Square Enix. People get angry at Square Enix because there's many games missing. The games we do get are sporadically dropped games. Like, oh yeah, we don't get Final Fantasy VII Remake, but we get Final Fantasy, was it Paradise Origins or whatever it's called? Like, and The game's, by the way, that game's broken on Xbox. Square Enix hasn't fixed it, and apparently they don't intend on fixing it. And it's absolutely broken, apparently. People can't get past the start screen sometimes. People do not purchase that game on Xbox. It's broken. But like, it looks like we are going to see some Final Fantasy games, or at least some Square Enix games in general, at the Xbox showcase. I do think it's going to happen. The year period of Xbox, I should say, exclusivity is up for Final Fantasy 16 soon. I think it's happening. If anything, they need to show the Xbox fan base that they are serious about the platform, which they've never really done before. And this would be the way to do it. This is like, all eyes are on them, the world stage. I think it's going to happen. I think we will see Final Fantasy 16 remake. I think we will see things like the Pixel remasters, and maybe even the Final Fantasy 9 remake. There's a lot of Final Fantasy fans on Xbox. Square just needs to actually put the work in. Like, hell, I know Final Fantasy fans that are on Xbox, and they had no idea that 15 launched on the console, because Square Enix couldn't advertise it that way. It's sad, really, if you think about it, but it is what it is. Logan, what's your thoughts on the whole Final Fantasy thing? Because it looks like we are going to see some sort of Square Enix presence at Microsoft this Sunday.
Yeah, that's part of my predictions as well. I do think that Square will have a noticeable presence at the show. They'll have basically a Square Enix section, and I think they will rattle off a few games that are finally coming to the platform. The extent of them, I don't know, but I reckon, Final Fantasy 16 and surely the Kindle tablet exclusive Pixel remaster will finally make its way to Xbox. And, they finally have righted the ship with Octopath Traveler now being available for PlayStation after it was on Xbox and Switch. And the second one has been rated for Xbox, so expect that one. Maybe they, finally bring over, Valkyrie and the tactics games and a few of the other games that were held out for reasons to the platform. And I look forward to it, and I think it's going to be a good part of the show.
Yeah, I think when it comes to Final Fantasy on Xbox, there's a fan base that are kind of really annoyed. Over the years we've had like the sporadic titles which I just mentioned, but the first major Final Fantasy game on an Xbox was 13, which split the player base. I personally really liked 13. The vibe of it, the characters, basically everything about it I really liked. But like, there were a lot of fans that just didn't like that, and then we didn't get another one until 15 in 2016. So like, you can't garner a fan base off acting like that. Thankfully, Square Enix has moved to a multi-platform strategy like Sega, and it worked out well for Sega. So hey, it looks like something's happening, and that should be pretty exciting. And by the way, if this does happen, and we do see, let's say, just pretend here, let's say Final Fantasy 7 Remake or 16, all of them come to Xbox, right? What are the gatekeepers going to be like? Because they get so angry about Final Fantasy coming to Xbox for some reason. And you have people that just talk about how Square Enix should only do it if they have the resources. It's not my job to worry about Square Enix's resources. They need to provide the game, and I'll buy it. Otherwise, they're not getting my money. And that is the same for a lot of gamers. Like, hell, there's people I've spoken to that have Final Fantasy on their PlayStations, and they want to buy it on Xbox. So they're going to get multiple copies sold from people that already own it. Square Enix is a dumb publisher. I don't get them. They sold their best studios for, $300 million? I just don't get it. I could rant all day about Square Enix, but this isn't a Square Enix ranting podcast. It's an Xbox podcast. But yeah, we are going to see some Square Enix stuff there. It's going to be interesting because the reaction should be pretty hilarious. Anyway, we'll move on. You know what? Let's talk about all of our predictions because we've still got a few topics left. Logan, now, Someone's been knocking on my door for about 2 minutes. So do you want to get into your predictions while I go answer it?
Yeah, sure. I'll take over for here.
Okay, have you 1 minute?
Okay. So like I said earlier, I've already given a couple of my predictions basically. Um, I think there will be a noticeable backwards compatible section, and they will have at least a few titles. In my belief, there will be. If they're not there, I'll be very, very sad and very disappointed. But I'm gonna go with the happy train and say that they'll be there. So I look forward to some backwards compatibility at the show. Another prediction, like we just went over, I expect there to be a noticeable Japanese company presence there, particularly Square Enix. And I think they're gonna, go out there and be like, "Hey, we've mended fences. We're on good terms with Square. They are a healthy, good partner going forward." And to show reaffirm that commitment, we are bringing some games that have been missing from the platform to Xbox, and they'll show off like a Octopath Traveler 2, a Pixel Remaster Collection, you know maybe some of the other Dragon Quest games or Mana games, maybe the Valkyrie games, some of the other Star Ocean games. Like, basically, kind of, patch things up and make things a level playing field. And then, the big one, Final Fantasy 16. If they were to bring 7 remake or remake part 2, that would be incredible. I still don't expect that. I think Sony's going to try to drag that sucker out as long as possible. If it's even open to interpretation, if it can come to another platform or not, who knows? But wouldn't expect that one. But the other ones, yes. Doom, I think a lot of people are predicting that one to be at the show, and I as well believe that Doom Dark Ages will be there. Sounds like it'll be multi-plat, which again, for a 3-decade old franchise that has been on everything from TI-83 calculators to pregnancy tests to refrigerators, PC, Mac, Xbox, PlayStation, Switch. It does not bother me in the slightest for it to stay that way. I look really forward to it. I kind of hope it has some Quake vibes to it, like some Lovecraftian stuff. And I'm curious with it being, Doom Dark Ages, like, is this a prequel per se? Like, where you're the Doom Slayer and his origins with the Night Sentinels? Or is this like a um a different Slayer, like someone else in the order? Or is this gonna involve like time travel, like some event has happened and you have to go back in time or go to different realities? Like, I don't know, but I'm super excited to see what they do with it. One thing I do predict will not be at the showcase is Contraband.
Yeah.
Avalanche just laid off a bunch of people at their studio, and I think we can safely say that one won't be there. Just a hunch. I don't think it would be good timing. Um, while you were away at the door, I basically just said reconfirmed that I think BC and Square stuff will be there.
Yeah.
Um, and then Doom. I think we can safely check off the list.
Oh yeah.
I think Gears will be there in some capacity. I think Gears 6 will be the main thing. The Gears collection, I keep going back and forth on whether I think that exists or if it's even necessary, honestly. Um, if it exists and it's there, I'll be happy and I'll pick it up because I love Gears. I do routine playthroughs of that and the Halo franchises, because yeah, like Jamie said, some of us like to re-experience, favorite franchises. So I expect Gears to be there in some capacity. I think, along with the BC thing, that Sarah Bond will have a section of the showcase that will focus on things besides just like main new titles. Like, I think we will have a section with the BC. We'll have a section where they'll announce or debut the new handheld Xbox console. Like, either, if it's far enough along, show what it looks like, or at least just announce it. Say, hey, we're working on it. Um, I also think they will announce a date for when you can start playing your own games on cloud devices that are outside of Game Pass, because that was supposedly coming this year. It's your big showcase. I think this is the time that you finally announce when it's happening. And I think that'll happen. I think the Oblivion remake will be there. Um, or the Fallout 3 remake. I'll hedge my bet and say one of the two will be there. And let's see. I think third parties will have a presence. I think Star Wars Outlaws is a good bet to be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I Let me see. EA is usually at Xbox shows as well, so I wouldn't be surprised if you see a new EA title there. Um, and I think, you know, I think State of K3 is going to be there. I'm pretty confident in that. And it sounds like it's going quite well. And they've taken a huge leap up in quality visually, and that they're going to go more into making you actually care about the characters and the lore in the world. So I'm excited to see what they've done with Unreal Engine after Coalition has helped them a lot. So look forward to seeing State of K3. I personally just don't think Perfect Dark is going to be there. I know a lot of people do, but I think Xbox are very creatures of habit. And where have they shown Perfect Dark the most? The Game Awards. It just like Hellblade, they always show it at the Game Awards. I think that Perfect Dark will be at the Game Awards, personally, not at this showcase. And I think they will have a surprise resurrection of an IP. Not sure which one, but I feel like it's time, and I feel like there's going to be one big fan service surprise. We have resurrected this kind of moment. And those are my major predictions for right now. How about you, man? What do you got?
Yeah, those are good predictions. I think most of what you said will happen. The Perfect Dark thing.
Great minds, man.
Yeah, the Perfect
Yeah.
Dark thing, I think you nail on the head. Every shown so far and everything about Perfect Dark has been related to the Game Awards or some like word of mouth about it. Um, I think Phil Spencer was once wearing a Perfect Dark T-shirt in the Game Awards or something. So yeah, that's pretty much on point. Before getting to all mine, we have another super chat by Nick W. Thank you very much for the $5. He says, "I think Sega will be there and show off some games." I mean, that's a good bet. I do think. Well, Sega has a lot of games in development, like Persona 6. Who knows when that's going to happen? Because like Atlas is a weird developer where they can just make lots of high quality titles at the same time. I don't know how they do it because they're just really efficient at it. But I think Persona 6 could possibly be there. And there's also the Sega games by, like, I can't remember the name of the studio, but there's a Jet Set Radio game coming out, which looked really far along. There's a new Crazy Taxi game coming out, which it's kind of crazy to think that, pun intended, they are making a AAA modern Crazy Taxi.
I'm
That's
so hyped for that.
Yeah, and by the way, that has 100-player battle royale. like, uh,
That's amazing.
yeah, like I tapped out of battle royales outside of Warzone Resurgence, but like that sounds amazing. Jet Set Radio, Shinobi, Streets of Rage. Like I think Nick's right. Like Sega, I wouldn't be shocked if Sega has pretty much the largest third-party presence at the show. Sega and Microsoft, they clearly have like a good relationship. Evidently, like most of their games have been shown off the past few years at their shows, like Persona 5 Tactica, Metaphor V Fantasio. I didn't butcher the name that time, and multiple Persona games like have launched on Game Pass. So it's like Sega is clearly cool with having announcements at an Xbox show. So I think next we're going to see pretty much anything there. So yeah, thank you for the $5, Nick. It's going to be a good show. Anyway, my predictions: the Gears thing. Now, I've played Gears of War 2 and 3, a million times, and you know what? I'm going to play them for another million times because I love those games. The reason why I believe it'll happen is because we didn't know about the first game, right? Gears of War Ultimate Edition and Gears of War 4 were being made at the same time. And the only reason Ultimate Edition leaked is because one of the testers, and I think he was sued into oblivion, leaked screenshots of the multiplayer. So, like, yeah, like, imagine being sued by Microsoft. Ouch. But I do think there will be some sort of collection because Gears 6 is years away. And it's kind of all but confirmed now that there will be some sort of Gears 6 reveal. Maybe like an in-engine teaser or something. But like, I think it's been long enough to the point where we could have multiple Gears announcements. A collection would go down really well, considering they only have to do 2 and 3. And I say only, but it is a lot of work, because the first game was essentially remade in Unreal Engine 4, brand new assets, even redirected cutscenes. The only thing that was the same was the voice acting, really, and the layouts of the levels. But I think we could see that. Like you said, I think Perfect Dark probably not going to be there. Although it is kind of funny how, I won't mention names, that game was apparently going to be it was like having rough development, and then a day later it wasn't. So it's like, people need to calm down with
it's
saying
Schrodinger's development, man.
Yeah. And by the way, before I get into the rest of my predictions, I just want to talk about game rumors quickly. If people are sitting on rumors, and I have in the past, I knew about Persona 4 and 5 and all that stuff coming to Xbox. I didn't really talk about it because I didn't really believe some of the stuff I was hearing. Like, I heard from a reliable source, air quotes, that the Avatar game was going to be a lot like Far Cry. And I also heard it was going to be a lot like Red Dead Redemption. Do you know what happened? It's a lot like Far Cry. In a good way. But it's nothing like Red Dead Redemption. Both from reliable sources. And people need to be more, thoughtful about saying things, because as we've seen in the news this past several months, gaming rumors basically control the mentality of gamers, and people these past 4 or 5 months, people being angry. Like, I'm a positive guy. I've mentioned last week why I'm a positive person when it comes to gaming. But like, the amount of people that got really angry over the Xbox stuff, and I understand, but like, people need to be really careful about the rumors they talk about, because a lot of it could be unsubstantiated. Can't say that word for some reason today. And people just need to be more thorough when it comes to like releasing stuff. Like, be careful, because sometimes people may talk about stuff and then, like, look at the multi-platform stuff. People have been joking about it in the media, and people are reacting to it. Do you know what I say when there's a sour topic? Even though I don't believe it's happening, by the way, it's something people shouldn't joke about, because people react to jokes as facts. And that's the problem with society. So people need to calm down with that stuff. Anyway, back to my predictions. So outside of the Gears stuff, I do think there will be backwards compatibility there in some way. It's like, there's a bunch of Activision games there waiting. Also, State of Decay. It's been a very long time since State of Decay 3 was not just first revealed, but when Microsoft first purchased Undead Labs. Like, that was 2018. They've been working on this game for a very long time. The Coalition's been working with them to, I assume, the engine and like the shooting mechanics. So that could be a very special game. The game Contraband. By the way, I was looking forward to Contraband. We don't have a lot of heist games. That, I don't think that's happening, especially with the stuff we've seen today. Unfortunately, again, I don't know why we don't get heist games that often. It seems like a weird thing to miss out on. Anyway, Phil Spencer has said in the past that they do plan on having AAA Japanese exclusives. So, like, I don't think there will be a Lost Odyssey 2 there, by the way. That's not a prediction. But I do think Microsoft, they will remaster some of that stuff, right? Lost Odyssey, masterpiece of a JRPG. It just needs some touch-ups, in my opinion. 4K, 60, get rid of all the aliasing, give it things like HDR, and some difficulty modes, because some of the difficulty spikes in that game. Absolutely.
The blue worm.
The blue worm. I had nightmares about that blue worm for like a month. There's a little patch of sand, by the way, where you fight random enemies before you fight the boss. I grinded in that little patch of sand for like 20 hours, right? That bloody blue worm was the death of me. And then afterwards, you fight this giant eagle thing, which is equally as hard, but topic for another day. I want a Lost Odyssey that I can just play the story in peace without grinding. And if people haven't played Lost Odyssey, you have to. It's amazing. The soundtrack, characters, world. There's no JRPG like it. It was made by the creators of Final Fantasy. Again, amazing. Anyway, yeah. When it comes to Sega, I do think there might be a Yakuza game announced there. The developers can somehow make, also like Atlas, make several games at the same time. I don't know how they do it. I'm hoping we get a Judgment 3 there. I'm ignoring all the stuff with the actors. I want my Judgment 3. Because like that game is just, those games are just too good. Like, why not? What else have I got listed here? Okay, Fallout and Oblivion. So now I do think there will be Oblivion at this showcase. In fact, I think if any game, by the way, there's rumors that there's going to be a shadow drop. I'm not running with the whole like there's going to be a shadow drop thing. I don't necessarily believe that rumor. I do think Microsoft to the point where they have so many games in development, they can do that. And one thing I do think they would shadow drop is an Oblivion remaster, which we know is happening. It was in the FTC documents. In fact, it's been listed as a remaster and a remake in different documents. So whatever it is, I think Oblivion's happening. I do bet, considering how Fallout's been so massively popular, Microsoft will squeeze some sort of Fallout announcement into their showcase. Fallout 5 is years away. And Todd Howard said that they want to get games out sooner. Like, I can't imagine being a developer in the modern age where, you have one game coming out in, let's say, 2026, and then your next game's going to be in 2032. Nightmare material for me. But I think Microsoft, they're going to find some way, somehow, to squeeze some Fallout announcement. Maybe they'll try and get the remaster announcement out this year because they want Fallout to stay at the top of people's minds. Like, when you have a 9-year-old game that isn't GTA, chart number 1 across all of Europe, that's a big deal. That's a very big deal. And especially it's Fallout 4, the game that people keep telling me is terrible. So it clearly works. So I do think, there'll be a major Fallout announcement. The hardware stuff. I do think if the handheld's happening this year, so I say this generation, we will obviously see it, and it'll release this year. However, if they are saving the handheld for next gen, I don't even think they'll mention it. Next gen's years away, so why mention it now? No T-shirt, no talking about like technology and future devices, what they've done in the past. I think that they're just going to show off the new digital Xbox and maybe a handheld if they can somehow squeeze the S into a handheld. Whatever. And also new titles. They have a bunch of new titles in development, like you mentioned, Logan. Doom, whatever it's going to be called, Year Zero or Medieval or whatever it's going to be called. Doom's obviously going to be there. It's their title. There's also other games by those teams at id. I do think id's been working on multiple titles. Just stuff I've seen listed in LinkedIn stuff. Like, Doom is a huge game, but I think they have a big enough team that they could make multiple titles, so I do think we'll see 2 id Software games announced there. I think Quake's coming back. I think Quake, it's been long enough. They saw what Doom 2016 did for Doom in general. Like, Doom's a massive IP, it always has been, but Doom 2016 brought Doom up to another level to, like, casuals even played Doom now. They can do the same for Quake. I think Quake would be boosted so much with having like a single player campaign, have a multiplayer pop off. People would really like that. And also, new IP. The past few summer showcases, Xbox has had brand new IP, and some of it was announced out of nowhere. Last year, Clockwork Revolution was revealed with gameplay, and it didn't leak. That game did not leak at all. So, like, Microsoft's proven they can keep they can keep some things secret and quiet. I do think we will see some brand new IP. Maybe things like Everwild and stuff. Maybe not, but just stuff like that. And when it comes to Halo, I do think we're going to see a new Halo game announced. Certain Infinity's new game, which they've been developing for years now. And I think this is going to be a single player only Halo game. I don't really think if yeah, I mean, Halo Infinite, like, it launched in a weird state with not much content. Now people love not Fallout. People love Halo Infinite. It has a ton of content. So, like, excuse me, my phone fell off the table. I think it's been long enough for Certain Affinity to make that game, and it's going to be a single player Halo game. Why do you need to reinvent the wheel? We're in a place now with multiplayer where people will play Warzone for years, and they're just going to add on to the traditional multiplayer. Fortnite is going to be the same thing forever. Like, Halo Infinite just needs to be the multiplayer they stick with. Constantly add content, new maps, new items, new weapons, new forge pieces. Like, that's all they need to do. Like, Logan, do you see anyone in the Halo community clamoring for a new multiplayer?
I mean, there are always some people in the Halo community that are disgruntled about something, but for multiplayer, most people are pretty happy and pretty content. I would say the biggest disservice and place of need for Halo right now is the single player fans. Like, Master Chief and Cortana, like, continue that story, or the weapon, or whatever happened to Locke, or Nathan Fillion's character Bucky, or a new spin-off, or go back to some other stuff. Like, there is plenty of story to tell in the Halo world and universe, and the single player fans have been not treated with the respect they deserve, and I think that should be addressed soon. And now's a good time.
Yeah, the main reason I think we're going to see Halo there, the single player Halo stuff, is because, like, when you talk about Call of Duty, single player is a component people like. It's a tiny portion of people that like. I'm one of them. I'm one of the few people that like buy those games for the campaign. I love Call of Duty campaigns, but when it comes to Halo, like, there's a large part of the fan base which only plays the campaign. I'm one of them. I don't play Halo multiplayer anymore. I haven't in 8 years, and that's just me. But I think, like, they must know by now. Like, I'm not going to buy any microtransactions. I'm not. But I will buy a single player game. I will, and especially a single player collector's edition. I do think Microsoft will try and reinforce the whole, some games are exclusive thing. Because remember, a few months ago, Phil Spencer was saying that, don't take these games being, multi-platform as a sign of other things to come. Like, Sea of Thieves is the only game that really made money that they took over. Right, Sea of Thieves did really well, but there's nothing really like Sea of Thieves on other platforms. Sea of Thieves has been huge on PC for years, and it kind of makes sense, and it'll be huge whenever it goes to Switch. But, like, Microsoft knows, and they do know this, that they need games exclusive to their platform. So you will have things like, Doom, I assume, which will be multi-platform, and I've always assumed that. Certain live service titles, like ZeniMax are working on a new MMO. I assume their MMOs are going to be multi-platform. And it would be stupid to not have an MMO multi-platform, especially a new one. Now, I've had this wrote down. I think we're going to see World of Warcraft announced for Xbox.
Oh, dude, that'd be massive.
Yeah, a lot of people have been wanting this, and the developer said they've been talking about it. And I think, like, yeah, World of Warcraft is a very old game, but people still want that on console. You can play it with a controller. There's even action-based combat now, which you can switch to. So I think it's time. And obviously, when it comes to third-party games, I do think we're going to see Dragon Age Dreadwolf revealed at the showcase, because E3 isn't, just EA isn't doing their own showcase this year, and it's been long enough. In fact, we've seen more of Mass Effect than Dragon Age, and Dragon Age comes out soon, and Mass Effect is 5 years away. So, I do think we'll see Dragon Age there. I also do think we'll see more of Assassin's Creed Shadows. Microsoft does tend to have like big third-party games there. And let's see what I've got here. Oh, Metal Gear Solid. I do think we will see Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta gameplay. We've already had gameplay revealed at their showcase. So who knows what will happen, and maybe we'll see a little teaser for Metal Gear Solid 4 in Volume 2 of the Master Collection. That's all my predictions. So basically new stuff and some remasters and sequels. So pretty much what all gaming is at the minute. But especially the whole new IP thing, because In Exile, a great example of this, where like Clockwork Revolution was announced out of nowhere, and people love what they saw. And by the way, every post I make about Clockwork Revolution, I get at least 2 replies saying it's like BioShock. Like
No,
yeah, like
sorry.
Yes, steampunk means BioShock now, but it looks amazing, and it's the biggest game. And by the way, I do think we will see In Exile, there with Clockwork Revolution. It's their biggest game to date. It's a full-on first-person shooter RPG with character customization, deep world building. The world will change depending on the choices you make, and I think they're going to show that off. Again, the game looked pretty far along when we saw it last year. In my opinion, they are one of Xbox's best teams, especially on social media. They know what they're doing. But yeah, that's all of my stuff. And, when it comes to the Jeff Keighley show, there's still BioShock 4 in the new Mafia game that needs to be announced. I do think we will see those 2 games some point in the next week. It's going to be difficult because there's so many showcases in 4 days. But yeah, that's all my predictions. I think it's going to be a great week for Xbox fans because, again, the first few months of this year were terrible, right? But the truth is, perception is reality, unfortunately, and people just run with whatever articles and FUD they can because they can. Xbox has more first-party games in development than Microsoft has more first-party games in development than Nintendo and PlayStation combined. You would never be able to say that 5 years ago, at all. Xbox has a roadmap of games coming out this year, consisting of Avowed, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, Age of Mythology, Towerborn, Flight Simulator 2024, and we're potentially going to see even more games announced for this year at the showcase. They have the better features when it comes to backwards compatibility and all that stuff. It's an interesting time to be... But as an Xbox content creator, I actually have stuff to talk about, which I love. Right? I love the fact that I can talk about Xbox stuff and not run out of things to talk about because they have so much going on. But it's why you see... This wasn't going to end like this, but this is why there's so much FUD about Xbox. It's because there isn't any. There's just nothing to talk about when it comes to PlayStation. PlayStation's outselling Xbox because Xbox is not advertised as well in most regions. Xbox is very strong in the UK and the US and Canada. I think they're also pretty big in Brazil and Mexico and Australia. But outside of that, PlayStation is the gaming brand. Microsoft, they need to become a worldwide brand more when it comes to Xbox. They need to actually market stuff outside of those countries. And the Call of Duty stuff, we didn't talk about Call of Duty, but Call of Duty is going to be a big deal. Even normies were talking about the Activision deal, talking about how you'd be able to play the new Call of Duty in Game Pass. What? That's crazy. And look, this isn't me crapping on PlayStation. PlayStation, they're going to have some great games down the line. Astro Bot does look good, but if anyone ever gets bored, look at PlayStation content creators. Not them personally, but their content. It's all about Xbox games in a mythical PlayStation showcase. There's nothing to talk about. They can crap on Concord because they don't like live service games, and that's perfectly fine. People can crap on what they want, but there's nothing to talk about. Nothing. Zip. That's why you see all the bigger, media style podcasts that cover PlayStation and Xbox. You'll notice that they constantly talking about Xbox games. It's because there's nothing to talk about. They talk about a mythical Bloodborne remake. That isn't even a rumor. It's just things people are making up. People can do shocked faces over thumbnails, over things that haven't happened yet. The truth is, there's nothing to talk about. And the thing is, it was the same for Xbox 10 years ago. There was nothing to talk about Xbox because they didn't have any studios outside of 343, Lionhead, which they shut down, Rare, which were making Sea of Thieves at the time, and, Turn 10. They didn't have any other studios. It's completely changed now. And that's why, as an Xbox content creator, I'm happy with what's coming. There's a lot of games coming. And I think, the forced negativity we see on a daily basis is forced for a reason. It's because there's nothing to talk about. Now, down the line, like I said, PlayStation, they're going to have great games. There's going to be a Switch 2 announced at some point this year, I assume. Overall, people should want Xbox to be healthy and want PlayStation and Nintendo to be healthy, because at the end of the day, if Xbox is doing well, that pushes PlayStation to be better. If PlayStation does well, that pushes Xbox to be better. And then you have Nintendo sitting in the corner just raking in money by doing what they do, But hey, it is what it is. Logan, have you got anything else to say before we close out the show?
Yeah, there's a another showcase that's on the 7th by Guerrilla Collective, which I've been seeing a lot of lately, and it's gonna have a bunch of indie developers and studios there, and it looks like they have some pretty cool titles that have been teased so far. I know someone from Night Dive even teased that, hey, there'll be some cool stuff there people should check out. So I would keep your eye on that one on the 7th. IGN is having their indie showcase at some point pretty soon. And then we've already, spent a lot of time on Jeff Keighley and his shows. And then the Xbox show, obviously, on the 9th. There is a boatload of game announcements coming soon. And again, like a reminder, if you see indies that are announced and it's a smaller developer or studio and they don't have Xbox listed in their first announcement, let them know kindly. Just be like, hey, you know, assuming this, works out, you do well on Steam or whatever, could you please bring this to Xbox? We would love to play this. And I have found that the overwhelming majority of them have been super receptive and would like to bring it to as many platforms as possible. There have been a few which have weirdly given me cold shoulders and haven't responded for whatever reason, but for the most part, people want their games played by as many people. So if you let them know, at the very least, they'll take interest as a positive thing.
Yeah, we've talked about this in the past. People need to be vocal with the smaller games to come over, because it works. It really does work. And these games do sell, by the way. That Unboxed Hypercharged, I get its name wrong every time. I'm terrible with names. But it just sold, I think, 40,000 copies on Xbox. By the way, that is a lot for an indie game with next to no marketing. And it's a first-person shooter. It has single player, has multiplayer modes. You can even play against multiplayer bots. So all kinds of modes available. And yeah, that's an indie game. Selling really well, not in Game Pass. But again, like I said, ignore the FUD, all that stuff. And when it comes to the whole, are games going to skip Xbox? I cover games coming out to Xbox. And let me tell you, there's a lot of cool games coming down the road. And none of these big titles are skipping Xbox. So there's that. Now, if people are interested in Xbox content, I made a video. I was able to put it out last night. It was covering the 10 biggest games coming out in June. It took a while to make, and I couldn't get it out on time due to personal reasons, which I won't discuss. But anyway, I got the video out last night. If people want to support the channel, just view it. Give it a like if you enjoy it, or dislike if you don't. These videos take a long time to make, and I hope people enjoy them. and YouTube doesn't necessarily always give people the notifications when the videos are posted. Anyway, before we close out the show, I will be live streaming the showcase. At least I should be live streaming the showcase. So people, if you want to come to the channel and watch it with me, I'll talk over it. There'll be a pre-show where I'll go live maybe 30 minutes to an hour beforehand, and then I'll talk about everything afterwards. Again, I'll give people about a day's notice whether I can get it done or not. Busy stuff, but it should be fun. We're going to have a laugh about the show. Enjoy it. Trust me, it's going to be a fun time. Anyway, the links to our Twitter and all that stuff is in the description down below. My link for my previous YouTube video is in the description down below. So if you want to support that, it's greatly appreciated. We'll be back next week for a new episode of All Things Xbox Podcast on Tuesdays, as per usual. It's going to be a good week, and I've got plenty of stuff coming. And I've got more videos coming out next week as well. It's going to be a busy time on the channel. Anyway, we're out, everybody.